This is African Bank, and this is Tom Winterboer, the curator at African Bank. I'm Bruce Whitfield. You're watching tonight. Welcome to the show. The last time we were here was just over a month ago when the curator was appointed to look into African Bank's finances. Leonka Kinnis had quit. African Bank was in a great deal of uncertainty. So just how stable is African Bank? How are the collections going? And is it a running business? We'll find out with this guy in just a moment.
Thank you.
So, Tom Winterboer, how are things going?
It's been a very tough month. I think anybody that thinks it's not tough probably doesn't understand it. So it's been hard, but very interesting. And, the big thing for us is here just to make sure that business continues and getting the bank, and at least the new bank, back up and running.
For those of us who don't understand it, why is it tough? Why is it tough being the outsider coming into a business in distress?
I think the first thing we did the last time around talk about it, that the first time I came here was on the 9th of August. So it's and then the curatorship announced on the 10th and really fully fledged on the 11th of August. So yes, it's quite hard. One needs to understand the workings of this particular business. Clearly one understands banking, but in terms of the particular business, specific issues that it faces, to try and understand why it got to where it is. And yes, there's no magic solution for a business that has been running this long to try and fix it literally in a month. But the main thing is to understand what is here, make sure that one stabilizes what's here, taking control of a number of functions. So it's quite a wide-ranging things to get done.
There's the accounting job, of course. There's coming to grips with the numbers, looking at financial statements and working out whether or not this is a going concern, whether or not it is a sustainable business. And then there's 6,000 or 7,000 people walking around with big eyes wondering whether this time next month there's a job for them or not. Two different dynamics. Let's go through the first one. Is there a sustainable business?
Yeah, firstly, in looking at sustainable business, looking forward with New Bank, we believe there is a sustainable business, and I think the transaction that's anticipated and proposed, that'll deliver a sustainable business. And we'll obviously look in terms of other areas and other business lines to bring through into the New Bank, but that's just early days for that in particular. If one look at employees, we just have just over 5,000 employees. We had a staff briefing again on Tuesday earlier this week, just to update them, as to where the process is, and I think that was well received. And then further to that, other things like salaries continue to be paid. The negotiations with the union started yesterday.
What negotiations would those be?
So those would be salary negotiations, as we do this time of the year every year. So that has commenced, and we need to see where that goes. But clearly, employees' rights are protected, and it's important that they do know that.
Okay, but you got the good bank, the bad bank. What have you seen in the bad bank? Has that got anything to do with you at all, or is that just the Reserve Bank's problem?
Yeah, at the moment, everything is still in the existing bank. So both the good bank and the bad book. And for the moment, I've got to look after both of that. I think in terms of the way forward and the way we approach it, I think there are three main areas we're looking at. So we're looking at how do we conclude the deal that was proposed, and that is a very important part, and a lot of urgency around that, and I'm happy to talk about timelines there. Then sort of managing the ongoing operations, and then the third element is saying, what should future strategy be? And that is quite an important area where we're focusing and say, where should that go? So those three areas. If I could just talk a little bit about the deal.
I mean, that's important though. I mean, the timelines are important in this process, because when you came in, I think you were under the impression that this would be done and dusted in 6 months. The skeptics are looking at this and saying there is no way that you take the great ship Titanic and turn it around that quickly.
Look, at the moment we still have a timetable, and we believe we can execute on that to have
Is that a 6-month
a listing. Yes, a listing by sometime in February. So we're still pushing very, very hard for that. And then when you look at the deal side, for instance, we sort of mainly 4 areas. We look at sort of establish a platform. So the the establishment of the new entity is already in process. So you've obviously got to have a new company firstly. So that is already in process. The next side of it is to go through the actual transactional phase, and there are quite a lot of points and areas to that. So evaluation of stand gender, one business that we'd like to bring into the new bank, that is already commenced. The Competition Commission submission is imminent. We need to get that in. So a lot of those things, a lot of work, and that's progressing. The areas that take a bit of time would be the regulatory approvals, but the benefit is that African Bank, in terms of its current position, is existing, but making sure that the good book then goes into good bank, but once again making sure that those approvals get into place.
How are collections going? Because one of the concerns, of course, in a process like this, where people hear news via, is that people go, oh, the bank's bust, I don't need to pay back my debt, and disappear. Has there been an element of that, or have you seen a sustainable collections process?
Yeah, look, there is talk, and sometimes in the media one would see that, but we've been pleasantly surprised, so collections have actually been in line with expectations, so that's great.
Whose expectations? African Bank's expectations, or your expectations as curator?
African Bank's expectations in terms of what has happened in the past. One would obviously like that to be better, and we're putting measures in place to make sure that improves. And I'm quite happy to talk about 3 specific areas in terms of that. But up to now, collections as expected. The big days on the month, 15th, 25th, and the end of the month. But a lot of focus on that. Just 3 specific areas. In the past, we didn't have point-of-sale machines where people could pay the bank by way of debit card in the branches. So that is in the process of being rolled out, which will help quite a lot. The other area is that our customers can now pay in the retail stores. So once again, the retail stores can receive money on behalf of African Bank. And then a third area, there's sort of a small incentive where we give people some airtime vouchers or airtime credit, just for someone comes and pays his or her 500 rands, give them some credit just to incentivize and bring the people in.
Okay, and so that's the collection side of the business, but every bank needs stuff coming in through the front door and leaving out the back door. Are you continuing with granting loans? Is the loan book continuing to grow?
Yeah, so in terms of that's absolutely crucial. So the way we look at it is, yes, scorecards have been reset. We may still tweak 1 or 2 areas on that.
Have you tightened up substantially on the lending criteria?
Tightened up, in terms of, tightening up in the 2 months before curatorship already happened. And I think the volumes went down a bit, at that time. So we're in fact easing a little bit in terms of that. And just making sure that the business we write is of a sufficiently high quality. We're now sort of running up to the festive season, so we're already looking at campaigns to just tell people that we're out there and people can still borrow money. So that's running us. That'll be running us into the festive season. Clearly, people must be responsible in terms of borrowing money from us. But once again, we're open for business. And people
do you have better checks and balances? One of the allegations that is going to be investigated by John Myburgh, who's been asked by the Reserve Bank to do a report into African Bank in the same way he did with Regal Treasury Bank 12 years ago, is to look at the concept of reckless lending. I mean, have you seen evidence as curator that there was cowboy behavior happening within African Bank?
Look, customers have at times written and in terms of that, and we're looking at that from our side. But obviously, what Advocate Myburgh is doing is a separate exercise. He's got 5 months to do that in terms of the Act, and a month to prepare his report. And, one just needs to wait and see what comes out of that. But if we get the sense of specific areas of complaints, we will investigate that as we would have done in the past.
Okay, but John Myburgh's been asked to look into African Bank, look at allegations of fraud, look at inadequate provisioning, all of those things that the Reserve Bank is concerned about. From what you see, is there sufficient evidence internally to suggest that that investigation is necessary?
It's a hard call to make, but in terms of his investigation, that is something that would normally follow a curatorship, and it's probably a proper process.
Standard
and the
procedure.
Right process. Yes, and it's the right process, and certainly as we go and we become aware of issues, when we're obliged to flag that to him, and we will. And his process, should obviously continue, and he's got the support from the people at African Bank in terms of that.
Has he started?
We started. Some of the meetings commenced last week, and so that is started and is running. Yes.
When we look at the business of African Bank, the provisioning, of course, was always a deep concern. One of the announcements that came through in the trading statement, as Leon Kokinis announced his resignation, was that we've brought provisioning to industry standard practices, which a lot of people weren't aware that African Bank had its own method of provisioning, which inflated profits and made the bank look a lot healthier than in fact it was. Have you seen a need to relook at the provisioning policies of the bank, or is what was put in place on that particular day adequate?
Yeah. At the moment, we are looking at the models used for provisioning, and we're still working on that and updating that. So it's difficult to say that it's now fully provided as of the 6th of August announcement. So we're looking at that to make sure that that's appropriate. The year end is 30th of September, and we at the moment aiming to complete the accounts as per the norm. And I think that is scheduled to be ready and out to the market towards the end of November.
You're looking for a listing, a relisting in perhaps February, maybe March next year. Will shareholders get anything, or will this be a brand new start, a new broom listing as such?
I think at the moment we're still looking at what shareholders could get and should get. We've been meeting with a number of interested parties, and then really the funders, and some of those meetings have happened. We'll continue with them. But there's literally a cascade, as in any position such as this, that the shareholders would be sort of last in line. And until such time as we know what is exactly there, one can then decide. But it's quite important just to once again distinguish between ABIL as the holding company and African Bank, which is a subsidiary, which is under curatorship. And
you've been auditing banks for most of your adult life. Is this the toughest job you've ever done?
It's quite hard, there's no doubt about that.
But it's fundamentally different, because effectively you've gone from observer to participant through the curatorship.
Yeah, although when you work in the profession, you obviously get quite involved in terms of advice. We've helped new banks set up.
Advice is different to decision making, though, isn't it?
In terms of setting banks up. But yes, decision making is tough, and one's got to look and consider all the options. I think that's the important thing in life, is that everything you really need to ask yourself what is the best option, instead of just the one option that's put in front of you, and just the consequences of the various options. But certainly been very interesting until now.
Tom Winterboer is the man who is in charge of the curatorship of African Bank. His day job is at PwC. He's hoping to get back to that at the end of the first quarter of next year. That was tonight. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the update with Tom Winterboer, the curator at African Bank. Till tomorrow, good night.